Welcome to this second video in a series from the Practice Protection Committee. Again, welcoming Dr. Mark Aeder with us. Our topic today is going to be the key factors that one should use in selecting their financial advisor. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. It's nice to be back here with you.
So, Mark, as we think about surgeons out there, they don't have a lot of background in financial affairs normally, and you know, we've emphasized to them over and over again that they need to get this team developed so that they can have the right people to help them make smart financial decisions. So tell us how you would recommend that surgeons start to make those kinds of decisions. Where do they go? How do they start doing it?
If we focus on the financial advisor, I think the financial advisor is the most important part of your team. This is going to be the quarterback. This is the person that's going to really take you through with a lot of your life decisions. You're trusting a lot of accounts, a lot of money to this person in order to be able to take care of you and your family. So when you make this decision, I think you need to go in there well informed. Now, before you even start to look for a financial advisor, spend an evening or two with your spouse, with your partner. Spend an evening or two just writing out all sorts of things about where you want to be, what the family's goals are, what the timelines are. Put a lot of thought into this. When do you want to retire? Where would you like to retire? What sort of personal needs do you have? Do you have any other obligations? How are we going to handle the loans? How are you going to handle education? How are you going to handle long-term care, whether for yourself or your parents? Some people have, challenging situations at home with children and things like that. You need to know where your assets are, what your liabilities are. You need to have a good idea of how you're protected, all your insurance products. But know what your personal concerns are, because I will tell you that there are no two surgeons, there's no two physicians, there's no two people that can walk in and basically convey the same set of conditions to a potential financial advisor. Everybody's unique. Everybody has unique concerns. So understand where you're coming from.
So as you set those priorities and goals with your significant other, with your partner, with your spouse, I know that there are many, many different kinds of financial firms out there. And what sort of advice do you have for people in selecting, the quote, big house from the little house or an independent group?
So that's one of the basic questions. I think that's where you have to start and where you feel comfortable. Generally, surgeons, I would hope by the time they're ready to retire, will have retirement accounts well into the seven figures. Well, the definition of a high net worth investor is anything over $1 million, which puts you really in a select group of individuals and really requires a select group of advisors to be able to manage you through this. So when you do this, understand if you want to take a major firm, if you want to take Morgan Stanley, a Merrill Lynch, or one of those sorts of firms, do you want generally come with complete packages. They generally have experts in all aspects of any sort of advisement. Do you want to look at firms that have a particular tendency? A lot of us have retirement accounts with a Fidelity or a Vanguard or something. They tend to concentrate more in mutual funds and turn that part of the market and certainly have a good insight there. If you want larger independents, these may be financial groups that could have offices in multiple locations and be able to share information with different people occupying different branches. You can have smaller independents, an office that you sort of walk into, and there are a number of associates there who work together, not as part of a huge firm, but pretty much on that personal advising. Or do you even want an even smaller group, a couple or three people that generally work together in order to be able to do this? I think what you have to do is decide where you're going to feel more comfortable and where you're going to feel safer. And I think one of the big things is are you getting the reports? Are you getting the updates? They going to be available? And are you going to be able to check these out? I'm not trying to dissuade people from one way or another, but each of them has a little bit of a risk, and we all know about the high-profile ones when we hear about them. But what you want is a safe, secure environment. That's your first cut.
Great. So after I've sort of set my priorities and goals, and maybe I've mapped out 2 or 3 different generic types of firms that I might be comfortable with, how do I get specific names and recommendations of financial advisors that would be associated with those firms?
So that's a real good question. I'm going to start it off with the don'ts. The don'ts are, you really do not want a family member. You really don't want your college roommate. You don't want somebody who you have some sort of personal relationship with or interactive. It's sort of what we look at a lot of times when we're doing surgery. You don't want the subjective to get in the way of the objective. And when you're talking about something as valuable to you as your financial security and your financial future, things have a tendency at times to go bad. There's going to be good moments and bad moments, and you don't want that to disrupt relationships. So I would not choose those sorts of individuals to be your financial management. This is not the time for you to go out and take a look for a financial advisor just because you got an invitation to a free dinner someplace and you're going to have this slideshow that's going to tell you about a particular person's firm. This is not the retreat speaker sort of thing. This is not, in my opinion, not even the person that says, I handle all the docs for 14 medical practices here. And I want to get back to the statement. You're unique. You may be a doc. You may be a surgeon, but your needs are completely different than that surgeon next to you, the surgeon on the other side of the city. Everybody has different needs. When you're looking for a financial advisor, you need to look for that particular individual. How do I find one? The markets have been up and down. I would look for somebody who's at least been around for a good 10 years. There's a lot of things that have happened, maybe even a little bit longer. 2008, we had a bad crash. We had a little bit of a rough going in around 2015. Before that, it was 2000. Somebody who's been through the up and downs, rather than getting into the first crisis and saying, oh, wow. So really, I think when you go ahead and you take a look, try to find those individuals that, or at least get some names, get some recommendations. And then after that, once you have your list, now you can start to really go out and kind of narrow them down.
So when we think about these people, many times they label themselves in different ways. Some people talked about the fact that they are financial managers versus other people talk about they are wealth managers. How do you distinguish that for folks, and is there a particular type that surgeons should be focused in on?
So the terminology, and I have a slide that I like to show, is who can call themselves a financial advisor, and it goes from anybody from an accountant to an insurance agent to anybody with a computer, and that the backgrounds are variable. There are some courses that do give financial advisors certain certifications. There are other ones that they have to have in order to be able to have deals that they can formulate according to the SEC. But in general, what you have to do is you have to really do your due diligence here before you start taking a look at it. You know how we have the National Physician Data Bank? Well, there's a data bank for all financial advisors in the United States, or all financial people in the United States. If they want to get a license in order to be able to buy or advise securities and advise investment products, if you go to sec.gov, which is the mainstay, and then you can start looking up names. You can start looking them up on some of the other financial advisory websites that take a look. You'd be surprised about what you even may find out about some of your neighbors in terms of that. But you need to find out what they're where they're coming from. Do that first due diligence. Then I think I walk in with a few questions. And I think the questions are really important. I think we should all have that, even though we have our background. The first question I would ask them is, how has your financial advisement changed in the last 10 or 15 years? Or has it changed? And somebody who seems to me to be chasing the next best thing, or be turning their clock over, if you will, every 2 or 3 years because something didn't really work out, it's probably not the sort of person that I'd want to have. If they tell me that this is the track that I usually take, these are the metrics I usually follow, I've made minor adjustments for this or that along the way, that I feel a little bit more confident with, because I think they really think it out and they watch it. They'll make a major change if one needs to be, but they're not trying to catch the next wave, because sometimes you catch the wave in the trough. The other question I would ask them is, do you hold the same investments that you're recommending that I hold? And the answer to that really should be yes. It's kind of like you go to a restaurant, you ask the chef if you'd eat at the restaurant, and they said, no, I'll never eat here. You don't want to do that. You want them to hold the same sorts of investments that you have. Now, the ratios may be different, in terms of your distribution, depending upon your goals, but they're always aligned with you, because just like you would want the best medical care for your patients, you would never advise them for something that you would not do for yourself. So I think those are the two main questions. Then you can go on and ask them, where do they get their information? What do they do? What's their experience? I can tell you over the last few years, over the last at least 5 years, it's been a stock picker's market. It's been an equities market to be able to try to figure out which ones are going to shine. So if you want to find out where they get their information, how they're going to do this, how they're going to turn things over, I think that's really important. You're going to get that from the interview. Now, when you're sitting in the interview, I want them to listen to you. They should probably go at least a good 15 or 30 minutes asking you questions about yourself. What do you want? Where do you see yourself? What's your family like? What are they going to do? Where, short term, long term. If they start making a recommendation of your financial plan after 15 or 30 minutes, I don't think that's where you want to sit. I think it may take a couple of visits before you really feel comfortable really giving the trust of your entire financial account to a single individual. You've really got to feel comfortable with this. They're in charge of a lot of money for you, and you want to make sure you've picked the right person.
So we talked in our previous interview about how we sort of analogize this to the way that we pick physicians to take care of our family members. And I know that we as surgeons judge the professionalism of our colleagues very acutely when it comes to entrusting the care of a family member or another trusted friend to someone. Is there some particular tip you could provide, the best way to judge the professionalism of a financial advisor?
I think if you walk in there, I think as physicians, we speak a lot to patients across an entire spectrum of backgrounds, and I think we're very good at being able to pick up personalities and where people are coming from. In terms of their professionalism, in terms of their passion, I think passion, if they look like they're really enjoying what they do, you will feel that passion. I mean, most of us as surgeons walk out of the operating room every day and we're in it for the passion. We're in it for the absolute high we have with the privilege we are given, with skills we've been blessed with to be able to turn somebody else's life around. That's the sort of passion you want to see in somebody during this particular interview. The other thing is that you want to make sure that their professionalism is really up top. They're good. Are they good communicators? Do you think they're going to talk to you frequently? The interaction, how easy is this to discuss? I mean, it should never be like I'm your client, but no, I'm literally your patient. I'm going to get you through this. I understand where you want to be in life. I don't want you to have a fight. I just don't want you to have I want you to have a lot of money for living. I just don't want you to, it's got to be something that they really bring through. It's not anything where they're going to say, I'm going to guarantee you certain returns. This is not what you want to hear. You want to hear that they're going to be with you.
So after you've selected someone that you think is the right person, how do you know whether or not that can be a long-term relationship, or you've got the right person for the long-term relationship, or does that not even matter?
Oh, it does matter. Patrick, it really matters a lot because as you go through different changes, your needs may change. The financial plan that you write out today may be completely different than your financial plan that you may think about having even 2 years from now. As we've seen, there's so much change all around us. And you have to have the right sort of person to be able to accommodate that. As I mentioned last time, I think it's important that we really educate ourselves. As I read about this, read, as I said, the Wall Street Journal or Barron's, and understand what the financial world is, and to make sure that you're able to discuss it with your financial advisor. If the person you're picking as your financial advisor is used to handling accounts in the $102,000 or $300,000 range, which for many people in the country is a very significant retirement account, that's pretty good, but it's not the wealth management that I think most surgeons are going to have or look for at the time that they retire. So can you outgrow a financial advisor? I think you can, but I think you have to constantly reevaluate to see if this is the right person. Look at how your accounts are doing. I wouldn't say follow it every day because you'll drive yourself crazy, but at least have your finger on the pulse. So you're getting the sorts of returns that you really think you ought to be getting. And if not, then I think that there should be an explanation to it that really helps you understand and that you feel comfortable with.
So Mark, this sounds really expensive. Can you shed a little light on how these advisors get paid?
Well, they get paid there are multiple different avenues that an advisor can be paid. Now, I think the first thing you've got to step back and understand is no matter how you pay them, do you feel you're getting your money's worth from that particular individual for what you're paying them, not only in returns, but also in service, in attention, and really being able to communicate well with you at all stages with decisions. Now, the most basic way is people with commissions. And when people are getting paid by commissions, the more that they have in terms of turning an account or buying something, selling, they do get a cut of that, if you will, off the top. They do get their commission. Now, that sometimes can lead to a conflict of interest. What you'd like to do is hopefully stay away from that if you can, because all of a sudden you'll start reading your statements, and I think it could interfere with what could be potentially a good relationship. Even if they're the right moves all the time, you just see that coming out. Then there's the hourly fee. You can meet with somebody by the hour. But again, that's not a long-term good relationship. When you have to pay by the hour, it's like picking up the phone and talking to your attorney. The clock starts, and believe me, you speak a lot faster at that point, and you get off the phone without the chit-chat. And your financial advisor should really know about you and your family and everything. You don't want to be pressed by a time charge or even an annual fee or an annual retainer. And that, again, is I don't know how many of our fellows remember when HMOs were were the rage about 15 or 20 years ago, but you got paid a certain amount per covered life, whether you spoke to them once during the year or whether you spoke to them 12 times during the year, you got the same amount of money for coverage. And when you have that, it's, again, I don't feel as healthy a relationship as it should be. What I really think that the model should be is a percentage of how much you're investing. And this can be broken down and discussed with the advisor. They take a certain percentage. It's going to be higher when your accounts are small, because if you think about it, they're putting a lot of work in, and if they're just charging you a very small percentage of the amount that you have under management, they're not going to cover their overhead costs. That will go down as the amount invested will go up. It's in their best interest to have that account grow as large as possible, because then their percentage grows as large as possible. You're not going to worry about the individual commissions. You're not going to worry about the hourly phone calls or anything like that. You're going to have a really good, healthy relationship if you know that you're both on the same page and you're going out towards the same goal. So my bias is that it's a certain percentage. You can break this down. I think a good question to ask is, I have a certain amount of my account in cash, or I have a certain amount of my account in long-term bonds, or something you're not even managing. It's just there, you're holding it. Should I get charged my percentage on that particular part? And most good financial advisors says, if I'm not, we'll say, if I'm not working it, then I'm not going to charge you for it. And they will totally exclude that part from the charge. The parts that they will charge you for are the ones where they're really actively managing your accounts. And that brings up another thing, and if we get an opportunity to do one of these on investment, is to talk about active management and passive management. And I think in today's markets, and I think going forward in terms of the economies that we're seeing and as they develop, your investments should really be in an actively managed sort of account. The difference is in actively managed is that you're looking for those opportunities. You may be making, as I said, those equity trades. You may be doing a lot of things depending upon the current situation, holding to the same philosophies that your advisor and you discussed, of course, as opposed to the passive, where most of us, when we took our 403B or 401k, put it into some mutual fund, checked off the mutual fund, and then just come back once a year. And it's just kind of passively sitting in that same mutual fund year after year, rather than really being actively managed. You don't have anybody call you up and say, hey, get out of this mutual fund. I think you need to be over there, over to this other side. So I think the active management is the one that's going to be the most costly in terms of the percentage, but it's certainly, in my opinion, very worth it.
So it sounds like that a fee schedule based on a percent of portfolio value might be preferable because it incentivizes the financial advisor to grow with you. Is that a fair assessment?
That's what I would recommend. I've been personally that way, and again, I am not going to advocate for something if you kind of pin me down to one of these that I personally would not choose for my own self. So I think a fee that's based on a percentage of amount of monies under management is probably the fairest, and as you say, it aligns everybody's incentive. You do well, your advisor does well, and that's what you'd like to see.
Finally, as surgeons, we're very focused on outcomes. And so everybody's really going to be hyper-focused here on how well they're doing. What advice can you give to folks on how to gauge that most appropriately?
That's probably one of the most difficult things to be able to try to gauge. Everybody has a different metric that they try to line up to. If you try to take a look at, well, this is what the S&P 500 did, or this is what this particular index did, the Russell 2000, or just pick your index across. People are going to pick indices that show your returns in the most favorable light. I think what you have to do is start taking a look at what your year-to-year gain is. You know that if you invested X amount of money in 2015, and look, we've had up and down years since 2015, but overall the slope has been up. And if you're saying having a annualized 7 or 8% increase with those ups and downs each year, and that's where you want it to be, you were comfortable with that, then I think that's what you have to go ahead and take a look at. It's what the return is. It's not what the return was on some particular metric over that particular 12 months. It always frustrates me when somebody says, well, my mutual fund beat the S&P 500. Well, that's really good, but what did it do last year or the year before or whatever? Very few of those really come out consistent year after year. So I think you watch your retirement accounts, you watch them grow. If you're not happy with the growth, then you've got to ask questions. But you should be meeting with your financial advisor at least once every quarter. You're a high wealth individual. And when you have that, you should be looking at your accounts. You should be looking at where your opportunities are and ask them about philosophy. If you're only making 5 or 6% and you think you should be making 8 or 9% annualized, find out what's going on. What do we need to shift? We need to be a little bit more aggressive here. And that's where I think that little bar needs to shift. And I think your advisor should be on board with that if they're a good advisor.
So, Mark, you've given a lot of great advice here today, and I'm assuming that you are a consumer of your own advice. Give us a little thumbnail about how that's worked out for you.
Well, Patrick, even though I worked for Merrill Lynch for a few years and I got to see the other side of the industry and know what's going on, I knew enough that I should not be managing my own finances. There was no way that I could be a good surgeon, a good clinician, and being able to keep up with my profession as well as have time for my family and still have to fret over these individual market gyrations and different things. So the one thing you learn quickly, or one thing I learned quickly, is that I needed to outsource that. Now, a lot of the keys that I spoke to you about are things that I really addressed. My wife and I really addressed years ago about what our goals were. And we were fortunate that there was a colleague of mine at that Merrill Lynch office who I had a good relationship with. We did talk a lot about philosophy, and I felt comfortable with utilizing that individual for our financial management. And it's a decision from our family and from our personal perspective that I have never regretted, nor is my wife and nor is my family. I mean, all my children are also have, as they've grown up and left home, they all have their accounts with the same financial advisement team. So I think if you follow those rules, for us, it's been very good. I've been with the same financial advisor for 20 years. It's been a good experience. Not everybody has that experience, so at least in that respect, we've been blessed with that. But every question that I have, everything I read about, every insight is really answered. And not only that, sometimes I'll get called by my advisor for questions that he has for me about what my insight or what do I think about this particular item or market trend. And so we have a really good back and forth relationship. When you feel that and it becomes personal, it really feels good. That's the way you should feel with your financial advisor.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for providing this very important and cogent advice to our fellowship. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. We would ask you to watch and tune back in as we continue this series of videos from the Practice Protection Committee. Good day.